Hi, welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith. Today we're going to take a look at a 12-team league called Last Second Dynasty. And if I were to guess, I think it was probably thrown together at the last second. A couple points on this. I took this team over as an orphan team the summer of 2021, so only have 1 year of history with it, and probably have players that I wouldn't have normally drafted, but it does give me some diversity. And so as we were looking through these leagues, it's important to have different levels of shares of different players. And so sometimes when I draft them all myself, I find that I draft the same guys over and over again because the same players that I maybe overvalue, I tend to get, and the players that I undervalue, I never tend to get. So this gives me a little bit of some diversity. So I'm always happy to take over another orphan, just in moderate doses. I have one that I'm taking over here in 2022, so it'll happen again, and I won't relay that team until after maybe the rookie draft when we kick off some of the teams and how I did it during the rookie draft. Some points on this, and you guys probably all belong to a league that you don't want to see end. So as I took over this team last year as an orphan team, this year with some back and forth with some of my league mates and the commissioner decided that he was going to leave at the end of the season, and he just didn't get along with some of the other league mates, and actually his opponent, he was in the championship, he threw out on the Saturday before the Sunday week 17 game, so actually his opponent couldn't make any roster moves. And so we've got that all ironed out, got league safe switched over, shout out to league safe, and I took over the league as a commissioner, and with the idea that hopefully I won't run this league more than a year or two, and then we'll turn it over to somebody else in the league, and once it's stable and off and running. So we do have every spot filled. I think we did actually have 4 orphan teams when it all started out, and one of the things that was going on here was that people were only paying 1 year, and so 2022 still needed to be paid for each team. And so what we've done is kick the can a little bit forward. You guys hear me talk about that. And any league I run, actually, we always pay a year ahead, and then we also pay for any draft picks that we trade away. So if any trades go down for the 2024 picks, or soon after the rookie draft 2025 and sleeper will be available, if you trade either of those 2 years, then you would be required to pay that entry fee as well. And we lock those up in the league safe during the season, so somebody can't just take a refund at will either. But what that does is that really has a security deposit, if you will, on somebody trading a bunch of assets away, winning money, and then ditching the league with a bunch of old players. And so I do that with each league, and I run a lot of leagues, so it's the only way for me to really manage them, I guess you could say. But what we have been is successful with keeping leagues run. So every year there's 2 or 3 that I have to take over and run, and hopefully for a limited time. I actually gave away 3 leagues this year that no longer needed me in them as the commission. I'm still playing in all of them, but we'll get to them as we go. And I think actually we have covered some. But this league, it's got some standard scoring. So 1 point PPR and 2 point PPR for wide receiver and running back. So I guess in 3 point PPR for tight end. So it's kind of got some crazy scoring as a standard. Some crazy scoring ahead of it. I was just looking at some of my notes, and so heavily slated to the PPR side of things. And I don't have a good feel for how that adjusts. I guess guys like Dion Jackson are king because you're going to be able to throw to them with 3-yard outs, and they're going to get a lot of 2 point PPR running back receptions. But how I look at this team, there's 12 starters, 1 quarterback, 1 super flex, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 tight end, 2 flex, and then 2 flex that are running back, wide receiver. So for 12 starters. But what I would tell you is whenever you have 2 wide receivers as opposed to 3 or 4, it really devalues the wide receiver spot because only 24 need a start, but you can we can usually pull things that that there's a lot of receivers available for you to play. But with the extra two flex, you can decide how you want to build this team, and go heavy running back, starting four running backs or starting four receivers. So you have a couple ways to go. And since both are heavily weighted on the PPR side of things, sometimes those third down scat backs aren't too bad in a format like this. 9 bench spots, 3 taxi, 4 IRs for 16 spots, and just kind of think that through. So 28 rounds or 28 players on the roster that you can keep at any given time, but 4 are IR. So it's actually a little bit lighter or shallower than a lot of the leagues we play in. So that doesn't allow for the monopolization to be quite at the same level that maybe it would be in some other leagues. But as I took over the team and just did fail to meet the get it to the playoffs, or well, actually I guess we got with the last spot in the playoffs with the 7th spot, so or with the 6th seed, or as far as, and the 7th draft spot. So it was right on the fringe and didn't win in the playoffs. So we're trying to get it a couple more wins. And we look at the quarterback room, and this is where probably the fact that I didn't draft some of these players comes into play. And I was lower on Justin Herbert than the majority of people, and so don't have him very much. And I was wrong. I mean, they're just flat out wrong on Justin Herbert. So guys can always dish out some hate. I mean, you take chances and take gambles, and when people were drafting Justin Herbert, I was jumping up and down and taking Cam Akers now. I mean, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done that. I mean, in that same draft, I was taking Keyshawn Vaughn and Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. So, that first year of doing massive amounts of rookie drafts, I didn't get them all right. And, this year, in 2021, last year, I guess I should say, I didn't get them all right either. So, I'm never going to get them all right. I just always try to just draft the board, make changes to the board at times when we seem like we're getting overweight in a certain player, and just continually grind through the process and trust the process over the results. And so it's good to have Herbert here. We have Herbert, Hurts, Watson, Lance, Mills, Daniel Jones, and Love. So the quarterback room is loaded. It's 7 deep, and it's loaded. And with a quarterback and a super flex, I mean, there's plenty to go around there. We'll probably look to move on with Hurts just because we're scared of Hurts, and look to move on with Mills, as we don't know how long he'll be a starter either. And maybe we'll look to move on with Daniel Jones just because, if we could get a couple good rushing performances out of him, then it'll be time to move. But he's a tough player for me to trade because I guess I realized that in these 6-point quarterback leagues, or even the 4s, but in the 6s, just that rushing upside of 40 yards on the ground and 4 points every week, just and the chance to run one in, it's a big difference to the pocket passer types. And so he's a cheat code, even though he might not be as good an NFL quarterback, and he's on the fringe. He's like a poor man's Hurts. He's a cheat code that can venture into the top 15 every week. And so if he's your second quarterback, that's pretty good. But let's say he's my 5th quarterback, what he is here, or 6th quarterback, what he is here. It's okay because he would be some other team's second quarterback if he's number 15. And so I don't get too caught up in, if I have a whole lot of top 15 options, that means that there's a whole lot of people that don't have them. And so that's a key distinction of, now you have it and the other people don't. I mean, that sort of thing. And so with the smaller benches, though, we can't get too crazy and have too many people stashed, but we may look to move, and if the opportunities present itself, we'll look to move on from maybe a quarterback or two, and really try to beef up the draft capital, which is just a full slate in 2023 and 2024. So, as we get going here over the summer and people start to get nervous about their teams, especially in a league like this where, it's quite possible that we'll have 7 starters. And if we have 7 starters, realistically, that means that there's only 25 to go around for 11 teams. And so if 3 or 4 of them have 4, then we got 12 for, let's say 3 of them have 4. That's 12 more. Now we're at 19, and we're down to 13 for the remaining 8 teams. And so somebody's going to be quarterback starved. That is pretty good otherwise. So we'll be able to either get some players or get some picks or both. And so that's what we'll look to pounce on at that point. And if not, we finished in sixth place last year. So we just need to inch our way up the board. We don't have to get crazy. We just have to inch our way up the board. And so as we look at the tight end room, very light. We got Pharaoh Brown and Noah Gray. So for the tight end room starting two, we're extremely light. We'll be looking to get a tight end if we can. Might even elevate a tight end in this kind of a format with 3-point PPR. When we get to the draft here, and a tight end will be a throw in a quarterback trade with a couple firsts. So let's say we trade Hurts for 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a moderate tight end. Just kind of a throw in, a Troutman type, or somebody's going to start but hasn't really evolved into something yet. Or even if it was somebody that maybe that people are starting to forget about, like Jonnu Smith, or somebody that's young, still on the right side of 25, and yet we have a chance to turn into our tight end room and pair off with Noah Gray. So that's kind of how I look to do things. The running back room looks solid to me. So we have Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift here, and then AJ Dillon, and Latavius Murray and Foreman and Moss and Hasty and Sermon. They're all kind of afterthoughts. But those big three of Dillon, Swift, and Taylor are about as good as anybody else is going to have. When you start 2 running backs and we have Swift and Taylor, we're at the top. And then we start 2 quarterbacks and we have Hurts and Herbert, or Watson throw in there, or Lance throw in there. We're at the top. So as you can see, this team is destined to win. I think it's really on a winning spot. And then at receiver we have Hardman, Renfro, Marvin Jones, and Wesley, and Watkins with the Ravens currently, Dion Brown and Fitzpatrick. And that just brings me to Dion Brown. He's a player that I'm really going after. I did hear out of Washington Commanders camp that they really were frustrated by the lack of involvement they've gotten Dion Brown in the passing game. Now, I take that with a grain of salt, though, and we'll get into some of the players I like maybe after some of the drafts and after I accumulate more. I'm going to divulge a little bit about Dion Brown that I like. I liked him last year at the draft, and so I usually don't give up on players very quickly, and I just kind of listen for the nuances. I think he's just slow developing. It sounds like he didn't develop the playbook the way they wanted. It sounds like they're feeling like Terry McLaurin is really a Z, and he's been playing the move X, and so they wouldn't mind having Dion Brown either be the slot or be the X, depending on what the formation is. And so I think that he's in line for a larger role. They tried to get him to be the Z last year, and I'm not sure that was very efficient. He was injured, and he didn't learn the playbook. I mean, those were the knocks. I will say this though: they signed Curtis Samuel. They signed the guy from drawn a blank from the Titans, and so they signed these receivers, and they don't amount to much. So I don't know that they're great at coaching the receivers up, but I will say that I'm not really willing to give up on Dion Brown. I'm sure not giving him away in a trade for 0. Like right now he's a free square for me. You won't see me drop him, and like guys like Wesley. He was never supposed to be. He's just a roster filler guy. But, like on this kind of team, Murray's going to go. And then, like Hasty will go. And Watkins, just because of age, will go. Sammy Watkins. Fitzpatrick. I mean, I feel like Marvin Jones. I mean, any of these guys can go before I'm going to let Dion Brown go. And I am, thinking the receiver room is a little bit light. But I do also think that in this draft, this year, that the receiver room is pretty strong. And so, excited for where we pick, because I think we're going to be able to really pluck a lot of receivers, and we are going to have to figure out some tight ends. But again, we'll make the top 30 draft list, and that usually takes us 35 or 36 deep in a draft. I always think that, and then I usually have some targets of guys that I just like, and that most people don't for whatever reason. Maybe it's that I'm building tight end rooms, or I'm building quarterback rooms, or I try to figure out what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, a guy that I liked last year that hasn't really become yet is Dion Jackson. Nobody's really talking about him, but I solely believe that, like even in this situation, if something were to happen to Taylor, he's my handcuff, and so, currently having a handcuff for the number one running back in the NFL is not a bad spot to be. So, just having said all that, excited about where the team is from that standpoint and what it has, but realizing that two receivers, I feel like there's two that we can work our way through, starting with Hardman and Renfro. But there's some older receivers here that we'll be looking to move on from if we can. If there's second or third round picks out there for us, we'll definitely kick the can down and create some roster space. But not going to give those people away. Like Sammy Watkins is a classic example of. It reminds me of Larry Fitzgerald last year. I don't give those guys away. Not that I love them, but you know what? They get 8 points a week, and in a 2-point PPR league, they're probably closer to 10 points a week, and they get opportunities, and they'll have that one big week, and so I feel like I wait for the big week and then maybe sell them as a veteran for a third, but if I can get a second and a third or 2/3, something like that with some juice, then they become something of some value for me. And so, and if not, then they're not in somebody else's team, so they're worth it for me to keep again. So, I always look at those kind of yeah, items or people that that we can just kind of keep around and that are trade chips. And so I feel like they are something that could have value to somebody else. And that's what I try to use the bench spots for. Is two things. One is chips to trade, at a higher rate than I purchased them at, if you will, like however much fab they cost me, or whatever draft capital they cost, and then you have to accrue some bench cost because they're taking up a bench spot, and then what did you do with that piece? Like not having him on the other team sometimes is better than trading him for nothing, and so not having him on the team to beat me is an important, or orchestrating somebody that because a good example, we're going to hit a team, and when we get to it I'll really explain it more, but last year in week 2 the kicker of the Patriots was a late scratch of the 4 o'clock game, and the team has kickers, so I hate kickers, but I dropped my kicker because he was marked ineligible, but the next roster run or waiver run is Monday, so I'm like, oh shit, there's nobody, and all the Monday night kickers were gone. So now I have an open roster spot. I'm going to try to trade for a kicker. So there's 3 teams that have 2 kickers, and you know what? They wanted a first round pick, rookie pick for a kicker, and I'm like, screw it, I'm not going to give up that. And as it turned out, I lost by 3 that week, and as it turned out, I was 1 game out of the playoffs. So by me not giving up my first, really cost me a playoff spot and a chance for money. Now, luckily, my team wasn't that good, so it probably wouldn't have won money. So, at the end of the day, but think about that. Somebody would have cringed when I offered a second for a kicker and couldn't get it done. But a second for a kicker getting me money, it made sense. And the only reason I was even willing to offer the second was I didn't want to set the bar that high, but I thought if a kicker goes for a second, then a quarterback goes for how many first? And I have a lot of quarterbacks. So I was kind of looking in those respects, but that guy was mad at me because I held all these quarterbacks and wouldn't give them up. So, it was a fair move, for him to make. But I guess what I'm saying is, so when you have your bench spots, you really need to make sure that you're always using them with a purpose. And so sometimes trades you don't make influence a league more than the trades you do. And so I'm always kind of careful how I trade or when I trade and why I trade, and I do it with purpose. And I guess that would be the biggest takeaway I would give people that are maybe newer to the fantasy game, or even if you're experienced in the fantasy game. And I guess I should qualify that it's not the only way, but my way of trading is always with a purpose. I don't make trades to make trades, so I don't trade to trade. That's kind of like a comeback. Like I'll say that, hey, it feels like a trade to trade. I don't really want to do that. I trade to make my team better. This will sound like some of the experts, if you will, or analysts, if you will. But I also trade with a purpose. And so maybe I don't always trade to make my team better, but I trade with a purpose. There's always a purpose. There's always a setting, the plan in action. And, it's ultimately to get people to do what I want them to do so that I get to the team that I want to have. And so, I guess I utilize the psychology of the trade to make my team better, ultimately. So, it may be a little bit unconventional. So let's get to the draft picks for this team. I know I went off on that tangent there, so I apologize if you've hung with me. Thank you for that. Um, so this team picks in the first round twice, and so we have the number 7 and the number 11, and then in the second round, number 19, and then 31, 33 in the third round, 43, 45 in the fourth round. And so as we take a look here, we have 5 picks to 33, two in the first round to 12. And as I look at pick 7, pick 11, I think that you're probably right in that range of getting receivers. And if I look here at the receiver core, adding 2 big time receivers really makes this team better. And so we'll have some dart throws in there. And I do expect to take this team from the number 6 spot up to the number 2 spot, jump 4 teams. There's some good teams that had Tom Brady on them. There's good teams that had Ben Roethlisberger on them. And remember, we have 7 quarterbacks. So, and that will say that with this team with 7 quarterbacks, God help them if they let a quarterback for the 7th hole, because I'll either trade out of it to somebody that really needs a quarterback, or just take the quarterback, because at that point the quarterback's worth more than even one of those top receivers, because yes, the receivers are pretty valuable, but the quarterback will bring the top receiver plus back. I should be able to get Treylon Burks for plus a first for the quarterback I could take there if they let one of those top 3 go. And so we'll hammer the quarterbacks on a team like this where we have more quarterbacks, because it's going to escalate the value of the quarterback. And even if it doesn't do it in year 1, which is now our year 2, we give it a little bit of time. And the more we get closer to 10 quarterbacks, I always feel like that's a sweet number in a 12-team league. That's 2 quarterbacks. If I have 10 starters, I probably won't get beat, and I'll probably be able to push the quarterback agenda to a level that's ridiculous. And looking at this team, everybody's young. Even like Hunter Renfrow at 25 is like the old guy. But if you look at Hardman, he's really young and still coming into his own. I'd like to be able to compete with Jonathan Taylor and Swift this year, but realistically, they're second-year players, or they were just second-year players. We're ready to roll. They are coming into their own, but if we've got to play around a little bit for a year to get everybody to understand that we're gonna beat them, then we'll wait till Taylor's year number 4 and year number 5 to just go get back-to-backers, and it might be worth it to us. So my plan right now is to go get it, but I'm also not going to let value fall in the draft, and the price of poker here for a quarterback is going to get high, and we can do that with what we have, because the 3 for 32 guys in this kind of a format, 3 points for a tight end, we're going to be at 12 points without a touchdown, and so Pharaoh Brown could be that. So we don't overpay for them. We're just going to take what comes, and if at 19 we can get a quarterback, then we'll probably take it. But we're not going to force anything, and we'll just pick up the. There's always a Nuzoma. There's always a Dan Arnold, always, and we always know we can get John Bates. So we'll just wait and be patient and get those kind of guys. We'll fill it out, and we'll go get this thing done. I mean, look, I won with Pharaoh Brown last year. So you just kind of think that through. Let that sink in. That you don't need a whole lot. You just need to fill it in with points, and we'll just get where we're trying to go, because we're just building the team organically. And so let me know in the comments, what you think of this team, what you think of the league, what you think of just the overall philosophy. Hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel. I mean, that's how we keep going. I always enjoy seeing the likes. Always enjoy the questions. Always enjoy the feedback. And ask you to hit that notification bell so that every time one of these videos drop, you'll be the first to know. So with all that being said, we'll look forward to coming back tomorrow at the same time with another team breakdown. Again, for the Fantasy Football Clown Show, I'm your host, Ed Smith.